else when it comes to diabetes in general. So when we eat food, right, as humans, there's three main places we get our energy from. There's protein, fat, and carbohydrates. If you go on TikTok, you'll probably see like carbohydrates are the enemy of all people. No one should ever eat bread. But it's our main source of fuel. That's what we use. Me talking to you right now, standing up, moving my hands, blinking my eyes. My body is using glucose to do all of those things. So carbohydrates are our main source of energy, our main source of fuel. Protein helps to build muscle, maintain muscle mass, also very important. Fats help our brain to function, our eyes to see, our skin to be nice and healthy, which is the biggest organ in our body. That's what we want. Our hair to be healthy. So they all have their different roles. But carbohydrate is our main source of energy. So when we eat something with carbohydrates, so let's say an apple, any sort of fruit, bread, pasta, potatoes, certain vegetables, we break down that food or digest it into the smaller molecules called glucose. So blood sugar or blood glucose is the same thing. They're used interchangeably. So if you say, I need a glucose check on this person, it's their blood sugar. So this glucose gets carried around by our red blood cells and delivered to all the cells of our body. So the red blood cell carries the glucose to your eyeballs to blink, right? So you have the energy to do that. The only way that the sugar can actually get into that cell, if you look at the picture, is if insulin unlocks the door to open the door for the cell to let the sugar in. So if you do not have insulin circulating in your bloodstream, you physically cannot get that sugar inside the cell. The sugar stays in the blood and doesn't get into the cell to be used. So when that happens, when that gets blocked off, so I want you to go to the high blood sugar. It's the next page after know your numbers, sorry. So it goes know your numbers and then high blood sugar. Everybody there? Okay. Okay. So when this gets blocked off right here and you can't get any of the sugar into the cell, that causes some problems in the body. The first one is your cells have no energy. You feel tired, you feel weak, you feel like you can't do anything. A lot of people describe it as I don't even want to get out of bed. I just feel like I don't have the energy to perform daily tasks, and nor do I want to. That's one symptom. Your kidney tries to pee all the sugar out of your blood, because your body doesn't like to have a lot of sugar in the blood. So the kidney tries to pee it out. So peeing a lot is a sign of high blood sugar. So feeling tired because you have no energy in your cells, and peeing a ton. Because you're peeing so much, you start to feel extremely thirsty. So thirsty that you cannot quench your thirst with water. You tend to crave like really, really, really cold, really sweet drinks. One of the reasons people crave sweet drinks is because you also feel very hungry. When you look at this, these cells here, when they're not getting the insulin that they need, and therefore they're not getting any sugar inside the cell, they're not smart enough to know why they're not getting any sugar inside the cell. They don't know it's because it's not enough insulin. So these cells start sending signals to the brain saying, give me food. Why aren't you feeding me? I need sugar. I need to stay alive. As a result, a symptom of high blood sugar is feeling hungry. So that manifests when you're extremely thirsty and your body's asking you for sugar. That manifests as I'm craving really cold, really sweet drinks. Many people come into the hospital not knowing they have diabetes, just pounding 2 liters of really cold soda, pounding juice. And they come because they don't realize what's happening in their body. They're listening, their body's asking for these things. And they come in thinking it's their fault that they have diabetes. They gave themselves diabetes, and it's not true. Those are the symptoms of already having diabetes, and you were just making it a little bit worse because you didn't know. So these symptoms here are really important to identify as a PCT, as a mental health aide of taking care of people with diabetes, or as a nurse. Because I cannot tell you how many times when I work as a dietitian, I'm in rounds, the nurses come in, they're just so frustrated. Oh, this person, his blood sugars are 400, and he keeps asking me for juice. Like, why does he think I'm going to give him juice when his blood sugars are 400? It's driving me crazy. Well, that's a symptom of high blood sugar. So if we address that the blood sugars are 400 and get that blood sugar down to around the hundreds, then you won't have those symptoms of craving juice and asking for juice. If your blood sugars are in the 400s, you're also peeing a lot and you need help to go to the bathroom. And that's a lot of extra work from people, such as PCTs or nurses. When you're busy and someone keeps having to go to the bathroom over and over and they need help walking to the bathroom, it's a lot of time and a lot of effort. So keeping the blood sugars within our goal is a really big help to reduce those terrible symptoms that we get from high blood sugar. Okay, so how do we know somebody has diabetes? Getting diagnosed with diabetes, there is a level called an A1C value. So an A1C value is a 3-month average of your blood sugar. A good way to think about this is, and it's kind of silly, but it helps, your red blood cells look like little donuts. And these little donuts carry sugar all around, right, to your bloodstream, to your cells. We want to see how glazed are those donuts. You should have some sugar on those donuts, right? But you don't want them super duper glazed, like think Krispy Kreme times 10. If you have all that glaze on the donut, you can't even eat it, right? It's just too much. So we're looking how glazed are the donuts. There should be about 5% glaze on those donuts, but anything over 6.4% means you have diabetes. So 6.5%, diabetes. Anything above that, diabetes. So we know, that's how we know if someone has diabetes. Another way to assess this is just by like a fasting blood sugar, or so if a fasting blood sugar is over 126, so that means you haven't eaten anything in at least 4 hours, and that blood sugar is over 126, that could be a sign it's diabetes, or if any blood sugar at all is over 200. So these are all diagnostic clues that maybe you're not making enough insulin. That your body, even if your body is stressed out in that moment, stress makes blood sugar go up. People without diabetes can increase the amount of insulin they make to keep their blood sugar perfectly stable. But if blood sugar is elevating, that's a sign your pancreas isn't working well enough to make enough insulin. Does anybody have any questions right now? And I want you to feel free to ask questions. I will say that diabetes is a pretty common problem that not many people know too much about. So I don't think there's any dumb question. I don't think that there's always room to learn more. And I think the more you know about it, the more you can help your patients. So on the bottom left of this, know your numbers, you'll have goals for blood sugars for diabetes. When somebody checks their blood sugar, it's extremely important that you check your blood sugar right before you eat. So you want to check your blood sugar right before you eat, and your goal blood sugar if you haven't eaten, so like when you first wake up in the morning, your blood sugar should be somewhere around 80 to 130. I typically will say, if you get a 100 on a test, that's a perfect score, that's a perfect blood sugar. A couple hours after you're eating, so if you want to see, let's say you took insulin with your breakfast meal, and you want to know, did I take the right amount of insulin with that meal? You can check your blood sugar 1 to 2 hours later and see where it's at. You want it to be less than 180. So the 1 to 2 hours after you eat is another way to determine if you're doing okay with that specific meal. But the pre-meal is really important. These numbers here will give you an A1C of about 7%, which is your goal if you have diabetes. 6.5 to 7% is your goal. Now, if you go to the next page on here, I also do go over eye exams, foot checks, and dental exams and how important they are. I'm going to skip that for this presentation, but those are also extremely important if you have diabetes, absolutely. If you know that somebody has diabetes that you're taking care of, and you're seeing them walking around the hospital barefoot, please just have them put some stuff on their feet. It's number one, make sure that they are protecting those feet, especially in the hospital setting. Okay, so low blood sugar. Symptoms of low blood sugar. When blood sugar is too low, this is an emergency. So if you are a PCT on the floor, and you do recognize that someone's blood sugar is low, you want to let the nurse know right away, because this is an emergency situation. Some signs that blood sugar is low. Shaky, sweaty are the two main symptoms. But it can also manifest as like early on, if blood sugar is dropping quickly, a lot of people will say, I have this really bad headache. A headache can be anything, right? But also feeling this like overwhelming feeling of anxiety that something is wrong, but I don't know what it is. Some people come into the hospital, they might be on like oral medications, such as like metformin or glipizide or Trulicity, and then they come into the hospital and they're taken off all of those medications and put on insulin while they're in the hospital. And it's just for a short time frame. So they've never felt a low blood sugar before, potentially. So they don't know what it is. So it is important when you're giving any sort of insulin to someone that you're telling them how much insulin you're giving them and why. And then also, if they're feeling any sort of way, to let you know. So headache, feeling nervous or upset, like that weird anxiety, confusion, or feeling dizzy, feeling off. These are all signs that blood sugar is low. So if this happens, what do you think you would do? Maybe a PCT in the room. Test the sugar right away. Get a glucometer. You want to get a glucometer, bring everything in, test their blood sugar right away. A blood sugar of less than 70 is too low, so we want to treat that. What would you treat it with?
Like orange juice with sugar in it?
Yes, so orange juice is perfect. Cranberry juice is perfect. Make sure it's not diet. Soda works too. So if you look at the back of this sheet, it's called the 15-15 rule. The number one reason that people with type 1 have hyperglycemia, meaning high blood sugar, is from overcorrecting a low. When you have a low blood sugar, my friend describes it as he can go into the refrigerator and drink an entire carton of orange juice. You are like needing to eat something, you just start eating everything in sight. So when people are having a low, they can drink a ton. And it's really hard to follow this rule on your own if it's the middle of the night and you have a full fridge in front of you. But from a hospital standpoint, if you have kind PCTs and nurses that know what you're going through, you just get them 15 grams of carbohydrate. So this sounds crazy, but just one juice or one soda. Have them take that in and then recheck their blood sugar in 15 minutes. So this helps make sure that we are not overcorrecting a low blood sugar. I see a lot of documentation of patient had a low blood sugar, let's just say of 62. I gave them 2 orange juices with 4 packets of sugar in each orange juice. Yes. That's a little overboard, and now the person has a blood sugar of 2 something, and then that person's dealing with those high blood sugar symptoms. So we want to correct the blood sugar, but we really just want to get it to 100. That's our goal. We don't want it to go too much past that. So you give the 15 grams of carbohydrate, which is everything on this list. 4 ounces of juice, 4 ounces of soda is the easiest thing to remember. Nurses in the room, you also have PRN orders for glucose gel, an amp of D50, and then glucagon. So you have other options in there if the person's NPO or if they aren't able to swallow. So you give that 15 grams of carbohydrate, recheck the blood sugar in 15 minutes. That's the 15-15 rule. And per our policy, you continue to do that until blood sugar is over 100. Any questions on low blood sugar? When it comes to low blood sugar, and this is again a little bit more for my nurses in the room, but also for my patient care techs, because you want to understand what caused the low blood sugar. Do we need to adjust the insulin? Is the patient on tube feeding and we had to turn the tube feed off for some reason? Maybe that's why they have a low blood sugar. Are they experiencing emesis, throwing up, and maybe that is why. Let's get to the root cause of the low blood sugar so that we can prevent it from happening again. If we just treat it and then move on with our life, the chances of them having another low blood sugar are high. So we want to get to the root cause of what happened, and that's not a punitive thing, it's just, did we mismatch the insulin? Was the timing off? What can we do? I do want to go over the timing of finger stick checks because this is something I've been noticing a little bit lately, and I'm going to give an example of what could happen. So in the morning, sometimes patient care techs just want to get their blood sugar checks done. So you go through and you just check everyone's blood sugar at 7 o'clock, let's say. And then breakfast doesn't get there until about 8:30. And now it's been an hour and a half since you checked that person's blood sugar. And their blood sugar could be different an hour and a half later. So what you're supposed to do, a nurse is not supposed to give insulin unless a blood sugar has been checked in the past half hour. So if you're checking blood sugars before a meal is even ordered, you're doing double the work because you'll have to check a blood sugar again. If you don't check the blood sugar again, you're potentially giving somebody too much insulin because they're basing how much insulin they're giving the patient on that blood sugar number. So let's say it's 150 at 7 o'clock, but if they checked it, or let's say it's like 210 at 7 o'clock. If you check it right before they eat their meal, it's like 175. That could be a difference of 4 units of insulin. So you want to check the blood sugar right before they order their meal or right before they get their meal. Typically a meal takes about 45 minutes to get to the room. So if you go into the room and they haven't ordered a meal yet, don't even bother. You got to go back in after their meal's ordered. We had one time, the breakfast insulin was given at 10:50, and the PCT went in the room to just do lunchtime finger stick checks at 11:09. So just to give you an idea, if someone's getting insulin at 10:50, the insulin takes about an hour to start working at its maximum. So if you're checking a blood sugar a half hour after someone got insulin, the insulin hasn't even started working yet. So that blood sugar before lunch is going to be artificially high because the insulin hasn't even started working. And then you're going to give more insulin based on that high blood sugar, and they could potentially have a low. So you want to make sure you're checking the blood sugar after the patient orders the meal. Okay. So the last thing in here is planning healthy meals. This is important to know which foods have carbohydrates, which foods have protein, and which foods have fat, or a combination of the three. This is what I give to most people. It is just a quick tip sheet of making a healthy meal, diabetes and healthy eating, understanding food portions, and I'm just going to go through until we get to the back part. And this is the plate method. So this is a very simplified way of creating a healthier meal without going crazy about counting carbohydrates or completely switching up what you're doing. So we have many different backgrounds, cultures, ages, people that are eating in different ways. Following just like a guideline instead of changing everything you do in one day, you'll have more success. Like if you went home today and you said, I'm only going to eat one certain way, let's just say you're going to cut out all carbohydrates, but you've been eating carbohydrates for 35 years of your life, you might not be successful. You might be successful for a couple days, but it's really hard to just take out a complete food group for the rest of your life, right? So these are some tips for what to do. You want half of your plate to be non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of your plate to be protein, and a quarter of your plate to be some sort of starch or grain. Drinking water is typically what I recommend, or something that has no sugar in it, such as like tea or coffee. Now, this next page goes through the different food groups. So you have the meat and the protein, which goes in that one corner. These are all foods that do not make your blood sugar go up. So these are foods like chicken, beef, tofu, eggs, cheese. They do not make your blood sugar go up. So if someone is having a low blood sugar and you give them a piece of cheese, is that going to help them? No. So just understanding the differences. The non-starchy vegetables on the bottom, so these don't make your blood sugar go up very much. They have tons of vitamins, tons of minerals, and they're like the powerhouse of nutrition. So you really want half of your plate to be those non-starchy vegetables. So the green here and the green there. You go to the next page and you have the fats. So the fats here, they also don't make your blood sugar go up. I mean like a little bit, but not quickly. So if somebody is having a low blood sugar and you give them something gross like, oh well, I guess some like walnuts, it's gonna take a really long time for that blood sugar to go up. Or if you just gave them like a spoonful of mayonnaise, it's not gonna do anything. Yeah, that would be nasty anyway. So the fats don't have their own spot on this plate, and that's because we are putting like dressings on vegetables, sauteing things in oil or butter. So there's fat that's on each portion. So they don't have their own spot on the plate. And then we have our carbohydrates. So this is the whole reason I'm showing you this. This is a list of foods that contain carbohydrates here. So these are foods that would make your blood sugar go up. These are foods that you would have to take insulin with if you have type 1 diabetes or if you're taking insulin with type 2. It is important to know people with type 1 diabetes can eat whatever they want. There's nothing different between someone with type 1 diabetes and someone without diabetes, other than they have to use their brain to figure out how much insulin to take. Should we all be eating that giant cookie over there? Probably not, but we're going to, right? So telling someone you can't eat that because you have diabetes doesn't make sense if they have the ability to inject insulin. They can eat what they would like, right? So this is the way for them to figure out how much insulin do they take with their meals, is counting carbohydrates and seeing how many carbohydrates they're going to eat at that meal and dosing the insulin appropriately. For the nurses in the room, we're going to go over this later in the week on how to know how to give someone enough insulin if they are on a carb count in the hospital, which we do have that ability to do if they have type 1 diabetes. So we'll go over that in more detail. But just so you're aware of foods that contain carbohydrates. Okay, so we went through everything here. I do want to say, I work on all the floors. I cover the whole hospital. I cover Bellevue as well. If you ever have questions or if you want more information on diabetes, if you feel like maybe we're not doing things the best way, maybe we could improve care, you have my number. You have my direct line. You have my email. Please reach out to me. Living with diabetes is not easy, and you guys are all there to support the people that are here struggling with diabetes. So try not to be judgmental and try to be helpful, and if you need any additional resources, I'm here for you. All right? I think that's it.